not going to discuss the actual numbers. We're just going to go by the lines because I don't have the negotiated budget. I'm going to go off of the original. So you guys actually have the number in the budget. So there's different sides of this. There's the Exhibit A, which is the first part where it has a budget and summary and payment on the top. So what this tells them is the very first line, it says the maximum number of subjects that can be enrolled per site. That's 10. So it means that, they might screen 20 or they might have 100, but they're capped at 10. And then it says upon written prior approval, the site may enroll an additional 5. So what happens is when they get to 10, they're a high enroller, and then they're going to come in and they're going to audit all their records or documents, make sure everything's according to standard, and then now they have the additional 5 that they can enroll. So when you get down to the overhead, that's basically just additional money that's added on. It covers the office overhead to run this trial. So that's a certain percentage, and then it comes out to the total cost per completed subject.
Oh, okay.
So that total cost per completed subject is what the doctor's going to get. So if you take that number, multiply it by 10, that's their total budget, or multiply it by 15, and that's what they can expect out of this trial. But then again, if they only get 2 patients in, then they're only going to get that amount times 2. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now we're going to go into the other big number where it says additional study fees. So when we negotiate a budget, we negotiate just in case. So just in case this happens. So when you go into the page where it shows additional study fees, these are the fees for like study startup. That's where you guys get the bonus. The doctors don't get that money, so we don't want to promise them $1.5 million. We promise them what they enroll per patient fee. This is an addition, so it's possible. So the study startup fees they don't get, but on this specific study, there's a DXA imaging QC scan. So a monthly fee will be paid to the institution for performance and submission of the scans 3 times a week or per month to central imaging vendor. So basically what we've budgeted in is we're anticipating, 72 units, price per unit is 80, and that's where it came in, or whatever that price is, the additional dollars. So if this is done at the office, they're going to get compensated for at the office, because if they're doing, 72, 10 patients, and each patient's doing this 3 times, that's 30, 60, that's the amount of numbers. So that's compensated for. So everything that they do, they get paid for. Record retention, it's $1,000 or whatever that fee is. That's for holding on to records, which they have to hold on to anyways. Reconsenting, rescreening. What this means is if there's any chance that the protocol is changed, then they have to reconsent. So they're going to get, that amount of money per reconsent, and then reimbursement for rescreening. Obviously, they have to rescreen the patient, and they've estimated a certain amount based off of the original enrollment numbers, and then they get that much more per patient. So the numbers I'm looking at is different. That's why I'm not saying the numbers. But so what happens is if they change the protocol, the doctor has to go in and reconsent the patient. So they're going to get paid for that. Now the doctor has to re-enroll or rescreen that patient initially, and that's where they get this amount. So this is money, it's the additional study fees. So if that happens, then this is additional money that they can make onto that trial. Screen failures, they're going to get paid for screen failures. So, and basically the same thing. Screen failures reimbursement of screen failures will be limited to 100% of total negotiated washout. So every budget is going to be different. This is just a sample budget. So when I explain the budget, I show you get the per patient. The additional study fees are the just in cases. So if this happens or this happens, then you're going to get paid for that too. The IRBs doesn't really concern them. The pharmacy fees, this is part of the study startup and the closeout fees. So that's just something that they don't see. They see the closeout, but we keep the study startup as per contract. Study-related expenses. So this is dry ice, courier fees, anything that you guys have to do for that protocol, that's budgeted in as well. So if you're having to purchase dry ice, you get paid for it. Screening of local referrals. So same thing. This is a screening of referrals, local patients reimbursement for the spent on activities. So what this means is when you first go into your database, you're going to pull your own patients. Most companies also have what they call a central campaign, where they're advertising on a national level. And if that call comes in and it goes, your site is where that patient lives, now you get paid for screening a local referral. So the sponsor just brought you a new patient so you can enroll, and then you obviously get paid, for that as well. And if you kind of break that down even more, if you contact them, you're going to get paid $25 per call, 3 attempts, a phone screening, another $25. So basically they're paying you guys to screen and enroll patients that are sent to you. So if a patient calls for the uterine fibroid study, you're going to get paid for taking that call, for screening them, for following up with them, because you just might get an email with, here's the person, so that person might never call you back. But you're going to get paid for placing 3 calls to them. Is everybody following me?
Yeah.
Subject stipend, this money goes to the patient. So overall, it's a total of $60,000. So when we don't want to show this budget to a doctor and say, oh, it's $1.5 million contract. It's not. All of this, like this $150,000 or whatever it is that's budgeted in there, that goes to the patient. That has nothing to do with any of us. So that's that side of it. The main part that we want to show them is the first page. This is how many patients you can enroll. This is after approval, you can enroll this many more, and this is what you're getting per patient enrolled. So the next part is where it says per patient. Now, this is where it breaks down on what the visits are, and this is based by protocol. So if you see the very first line, this is what I tell the doctors. This is what you're doing on the first visit. You informed consent, you get 119. The phone visit, there's going to be 6 phone visits. You're going to get 38 per phone visit. So that's every time you call them to follow up. Initial medical social history, OB history. So on top of the informed consent, 119, and on top of this is what you normally do. You go through that patient's history, you're getting paid an additional 115 for it. Complete physical exam is 197. The OB exam is 203. So basically for the doctor's time right there is $400 for that one visit. Vital signs, $50. So this is how this comes per visit. And as you break it down where it goes to the spreadsheet, that's what the procedure is, and that's what you're getting paid. So when it says procedure subtotal, that visit is $251. The second visit is $3,000 or whatever those numbers are. You guys seeing that? My numbers are different.
Yeah, and the spreadsheet, okay, Alex, is just below that. That's
right,
she's referring to.
So every line is based off of what, and I see what you guys see, so you don't have it broken down. So it's actually broken down in the actual budget the doctor sees is by visit, so however many visits they have. So on this one, the first visit, it's just your vital signs. It's going to be, a urine pregnancy test. So the first visit, and it's going to be adverse events and then medication. So your first visit is $251, but that's all you're doing. You're just doing vitals. Your second visit where you're getting $3,000, that's where you're actually doing the informed consent, the vitals, the history of the patient, the x-ray, for the whole body, that's $452 or whatever that is. So your second visit is where you're going to invoice $3,000 or whatever your number is. And then when they come in for the third visit, you're only going to do vital signs, so you're making another $50. So each visit after that there's not anything other than follow-up, the doctor's still getting $255. So
on ours we don't have it split by visit.
No. So it's each visit. Yours don't have that. Yours is just broken down because we just want the doctors to see that they're getting paid for everything they do, a pregnancy test, a informed consent, a phone call, everything that they do on this trial is what they're getting paid for. But so that part of it is just to kind of show them, because we were on a call today where the doctor was like, well, how much time do I got to put into it? You're getting $3,000. What does it mean? For that day doing the same thing you're already doing. You're already going to do an x-ray. You're already going to do an OB exam, vitals, history. This is what the doctors are already doing when they treat a patient for uterine fibroids. Now you're just doing it according to the protocol. But obviously that one visit is being reimbursed at that amount. So when we talk about budgets, I never get into any of the detailed study startup, how many visits. That's all based on the protocol. What they need to know is in this specific study, it's $39,000 or whatever that number is per patient. They can enroll up to 15. And then from there, when they can enroll up to 15, they have the option, you're covered for anything that happens. If anything that goes wrong, the protocol changes. Nothing to do with you, but you got to reconsent those patients. You're getting paid for it. So that's the biggest thing is that when they get paid for insurance, they just bill an office visit. They don't bill for vitals, urine tests, pregnancy tests, history, consent. You know what I mean? They don't bill for all that. But on this one, it's all covered under that visit. So that's really the breakdown that we want, them to have. And then they have what's called conditional procedures, and that's to the right on your sheet. So on the left, you have the individual line breakdown of what everything is reimbursed at, and then you have the conditional procedures. So the conditional procedures are things that have to do. So like the first line is informed consent, follow-up physical exam, including vital signs, it's 128, a mammogram, pelvic ultrasound. So this is things that might not be standard in that actual condition, but they're conditional. So these are all the things that they do. Like if they have to do a removal of an IUD, they're going to get reimbursed for it. So all of this doesn't really matter unless they're actually doing that stage, but they just need to know that they get paid for everything that they do, and it's spelled out when they start that study. So for purpose-wise, when we're talking about it, here's a sample budget. Look, it's uterine fibroids. You have to, you're required to do 10. If you do 15, this is what you're getting. And then they're going to have little questions like, well, what about this or what about that or what about how much additional work? And then you pull out the itemized, the 1.1. But we don't want to go to the total budget because the total budget, I think, on this is like 1.5. But if we don't do any rescreening or re-consenting, then that part of that budget doesn't count. So we always focus on the number 39,000 times 10. With the additional money, that's where we came up with the $400,000. So this is what you're getting per enrolled, but you do get money for other things that you're doing if they come up.
Okay.
So questions on the budget? I might have moved that pretty fast.
Shiloh, this is Michael.
Which Michael? Michael in Vegas?
Michael in Vegas, yeah. Just to let the team know, what I found effective over the last week bringing doctors in is when I'm sitting down with them, I actually ask them a question. I said, well, when you bill out for an office visit, you might bill out for, say, $300, and usually immediately they answer back and they go, yeah, but we only get $40 or we only get $60. So when they see this budget and then they realize that they're going to be getting all of this money, it really opens them up to realizing that they want to be part of research and they want to be doing these studies.
Right, and if you go by that line-by-line item, we just had the call today, vital signs, history, that's part of that initial visit. All that is included in that 300. This is separate. So, everything that you do is billed out. I mean, vital signs. So your medical assistant is the one that's going to get the history, and now your office is getting $200 just for that. It's not even that the doctor's doing the actual exam. Everybody else in the office is doing everything else, so they're paid. So if the budgets are complicated, they're broken down by days. So on this visit right here, it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So they got here 12. Looks like a 2-year study because they have the screening visit, then they've got follow-up 1, 2, 3, 4 visits, and then it's got the day after, and then it's got month 2, month 3, month 5, month 6. So there's no month 4, there's no month, you know what I mean? So it's like you're seeing this patient after you do all the beginning, you're only seeing this patient every other month, and then you're billing for that patient $436 or whatever the budget is. So for that day, because that's what they have to do that day. So let's say that they have 15 patients, and they're seeing them all on one day, then that day is billable at it's 436. So 436 times 15. That day alone is billable at $7,000 by just following up and just bringing those 10 patients in on that one day, or however it is in that month.
Wait, so where do we see that on here as far as how long this is?
Because that's part of more into protocol, and the doctors, this is just basically when you enroll. That's one of it's very long. It's like in an Excel spreadsheet. I can send it to you. What we don't want the doctors to see this. We want them to see, because this is all confidential information.
Right.
So when we try to blind the budget when it goes out, and I don't even think your guys' paperwork even shows what study it's for. I just happen to figure it out.
It doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't. I just happen to figure it out, but. So I have the actual budget I have the original budget. So where your budget is looking at, I think your fees are $39,000 per enrolled. Is that right?
36,345.
My budget says 28. So so you guys have the negotiated budget.
Okay. That's cool.
So it's a big difference. And your budget is at 1.5. This budget is at 1.2. So we've increased this budget by $300,000 just in negotiations overall.
Yeah, and that fee that we can charge, or if they want us to negotiate, then we can. That's the difference we can make.
Well, we always negotiate all the budgets on all of our contracts, and we have more contracts with you guys than the brokers. So on the brokers, they negotiate their own. But I always say if they need help, then just to feel free to reach out to us, and we'll help negotiate that budget.
Yeah, there was that fee on the broker agreement, the investigator agreement. There was a fee for that service, and then this is an example where how much of a difference we can make when we negotiate versus, them trying to negotiate. Okay.
Yep.
The broker essentially pays for their fee.
Oh, more than pays for their fee. So, yeah.
Question.
And just so you know, all her budgets are like that. In the broker's agreement, it actually says that we'll increase it by $5,000. So you're going to get $5,000 more by paying us that amount, which is worth it anyways. I think there's like a guarantee in there.
Yeah.
Hey, so I missed the part about if you do 10 patients, you get this much, but if you do 15, you get more. Could you briefly go through that again?
Yeah, just do the math. So if you are enrolling 10 patients, you do the 39,000 times 10. Once you meet enrollment, you can ask the sponsor if you can increase enrollment, and you have up to 5 more that you can enroll, and just do the math, 39 times 5 more.
Oh, I got you. Okay, thanks.
So question, Shiloh, is that number on the budget, that's 55% of all those numbers is what the doctor's actually going to receive?
Yes, based on per patient.
Okay, so every number on there, they're only going to get 55% of.
Don't say only. Only
really?
is that word in sales, okay? A salesperson should never say only. He gets to make 55%.
I'm not selling any of you, but I agree with you.
Yeah, I don't even know that I would get too into the weeds with them either to try to figure out how much they would make if they did this and that.
No. The only thing that you should get into with those budgets is per patient, and per patient, and based off of because if you tell them it's a 2-year study, they're going to $40,000 for 2 years. Well, no, you're only seeing a patient once a month, every other month after you do the beginning part of the work. So you don't want to get into those details, but just say this study. Or this study right here, uterine fibroids. How many patients do you have with uterine fibroids? That doctor's going to tell you over 100 for sure. So, okay, well, this study requires if you enroll 10, then it's $39,000 or whatever the budget is per patient, over for the protocol. So that's what they get. So, and then when they start talking about, well, how much more work, then you show them the itemized budget, where the itemized page where it shows you, all the different steps for vitals, for the doctor, for the MA or the coordinator, for the phone person. Everybody, the doctor's office is compensated for everything that they touch on that study. And that's the main point. So it looks a lot more complicated than it is, but at the end of the day, they just, when you tell them they're getting paid for everything that they do, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Like as an example here, see, look, the phone call, you get this much, or just doing vitals or whatever. Just so they can see it. I don't think they necessarily, you don't have to get into the whole total amount with them. Once they see that they get paid for everything, that really opens up their eyes.
Man, they almost get paid to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Amazing.
Yes.
probably need to negotiate that because I don't see that in the line item.
Right, absolutely.
I have a question. This is Grover Fish in Kansas City. Back to the budget thing. The first line there where it says maximum number of subjects can be rolled per site. Is that listed with every budget, and how does that relate to competitive enrollment?
There's no on these studies when they're only allowing you to do 10. You got to understand that there's a protocol that follows this, and just because you have uterine fibroids doesn't mean you get to study. It's based off of inclusion and exclusion criteria. So you might have 100 patients that are diagnosed with uterine fibroids, but you might only have 4 that actually fit that inclusion-exclusion criteria, and then maybe only 1 consents to the trial. So you have to break down the numbers that way. But on anything like this, I would say that the numbers are good, but it just depends. But that's why on this study, they actually budgeted in a central campaign, so the protocol might be a little bit tougher. And the protocol just means that they have to have certain inclusion-exclusion criteria. Maybe the fibroid has to be of a certain size. Maybe they can't have a certain medication or whatever it is. So that's why it's based off of 10. But I could have 4 uterine fibroid studies with 4 different sponsors, and all different ones have a different inclusion-exclusion criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much. I just know that it's in some of the material I read. We talks about competitive enrollment, that you can enroll additional patients into the study, but if you have a limit of 10 and you have 15 that say say 20, and it's allowing you another 5, what happens to the other 5 that might have qualified? That's what I'm getting at. If it's not competitive enrollment, then you can't add those additional 5 patients.
We would save it for another study. So if competitive enrollment means they're only having 10, that's all that site gets 10. So when a clinical trial goes, Miami is so overpopulated. I was just talking to somebody yesterday that the CERT study requires 7,000 enrolled overall throughout the entire U.S. Miami could probably enroll, or Florida could probably enroll that entire study. However, it has to be different backgrounds, different locations, different parts of the country. So the reason they have it broken down this way is like each study maybe has 10 sites. They only need, they need 7,000 patients. So if each site is required 20, you do the math, 20 into 7,000, that's how many sites are going to be set up for that specific study. So same thing, if this protocol requires 100 patients and each site can only enroll 10, maybe 15, then there's only going to be 10 sites.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.